You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, let's get after it. It is the Friday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Carter Hutton with you. What's going on, Huts?
Not too much, buddy. Obviously, we didn't have the Leafs last night, so we had some other games, but obviously pretty exciting times. And, for me, PA day here, kids aren't in school. Tough times, buddy. Tough times. Trust me. I need as many school days as possible. I wish they went 7 days a week.
It's funny. We're laughing behind the scenes. I'm like, something's happening at Huts' place. Is he making a new kid? Is his kid, are his kids home? I didn't know what was transpiring. So it's good to get like the official breakdown of what transpired. I can only imagine. I'm nowhere close to being a parent, but I imagine it's tons of work, Huts.
It is. It's a good thing. You grow into it for sure, but each stage is a little bit different. They're 6 and 4, and right now they are jacked up on snacks downstairs. There's snacks all over the floor, and there is every electronic device you could find. My wife's going to work, so if somebody comes in, that's on me, and you'll see me shoosh them away. But yeah, we're playing in the wild here right now, buddy.
Hey, that's totally fine. The more the merrier here on the show. I have some breaking news off the top. No, I'm not announcing another injury in Leafs Nation. Of course, we were the go-to destination for the Nylander news the other day. But they're out of booze at Greta Bar YYZ already. Can you believe it?
No, I can. I bet you it was rocking.
Buddy,
I'm jealous. I wish I was there.
we were at the soft launch last night. I don't think there's any alcohol left. I'm kidding. It was a great time. Thank you to the folks over at Greta Bar YYZ. The official launch is tonight. We're going to promo that coming up, but what an amazing place, dude. It's huge. Places to watch the games. Vic kicked my ass. Producer Vic kicked my ass and some basketball. They got like all the classic arcade games, Pac-Man. It was so much fun, man. I can't wait till the official launch. I don't know if I'm going to be there tonight, but at some point over the next week, I'll make my way back, but it was awesome.
That's awesome. That's unreal. I love bars where it's not just a bar too, like with the arcades and the games. And I'm always drawn to those places. So that's great. I honestly, I don't know the last time I've really had a late night in a bar, because usually the hangover the next morning is pretty tough unless I'm away from the kids. But I don't want to circle back to those kids. Like it's fun, but trust me, I remember those days. They're a lot of fun, buddy.
I get it, man. My brother's a new father of a couple years now and says the same thing. It's a different stage of life, right? Like they're the reason you get up. They're the reason why you do what you do, and you sort of carry on tradition. But are you going to make your boy a goalie? That's the question.
He wants to go in net bad. So right now he plays like this little spring hockey team. He's a centerman. He loves it. He's a good little player, but he keeps going like, I want to be goalie. Or he'll be like, let's go downstairs and play mini sticks. And he puts his gear on and he's like, okay, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like he wants to learn because he'll see me do video and help out other goalies. And I'm like, man, like I just want to shoot it at his head, discourage him from it.
You gotta go full retro. Make him a stand-up. Bring that back. Stand-up
Yeah. Seriously,
amazing.
that would be good. Honestly, they'd be all over him. He'd probably be better than me anyway.
Speaking of stand-up, Huts, the hockey world lost an absolute legend. As long as I can remember being a hockey fan, I've been obviously familiar, and Hockey Night in Canada has been synonymous with one voice and one voice only. There's only Bob Cole. There's nobody else. Passed away yesterday at the age of 90. Just an absolute gentleman, legend. Every marquee call, just Bob Cole nailed it. And I think the great thing about him is like the less he said, the bigger the moment it felt, you know?
Yeah. He had a great way of telling a story and letting the game describe itself. And for me, it was sometimes less is more. Sometimes you listen to guys
Yeah.
and they try to tell you every little thing. And, getting to play some games where he called, obviously means a lot to me, and growing up with him and Harry Neal and the calls. And, it's pretty amazing and a life well lived, obviously I feel every platform right now around hockey, you see people honor him. It just shows how many people that he touched, throughout this generation.
The tribute on Sportsnet's hockey coverage last night, I thought was fantastic. They nailed it. The guy's an absolute legend, and should give a shout out as well to John Cooper, who, despite going down 3-0 in that series of the Florida Panthers, still carved out time to share his thoughts on the passing of Bob Cole. For me, there's only a couple calls that really stand out. Gio Sakic from the Olympics, that was just next level. They're going home, the punch up in Piastani. Like there's literally, you can make just a top 10 of Bob Cole calls. It just felt like, and I think they had a direct quote in the montage last night where it's like, you knew it was a big game if Bob Cole was calling your game. I'm sure you felt the same way. Eh?
Oh yeah, for sure. You knew it was big time. And even for me, I know Rosie's touched on it before, like the Hockey Night in Canada towel. Something one I have. I think it's somewhere actually in my kid's room here. But and again, like Hockey Night in Canada, Bob Cole, like Ron McLean, Don Cherry. These are things that like you grew up with that are like the pinnacle of hockey, right? So being involved in those games that he called in the history, yeah, it's pretty awesome. And obviously sad, but again, he left a legacy for sure.
The great thing about Bob Cole, nobody ever knew who he really liked. I believe he was a Montreal Canadiens fan, but that's the one thing I think broadcasters do tremendously well for the most part is like you never know where their intentions are. Like I always felt that early on in my career. Like I almost had to hide it because I worked at NHL Network Radio and I covered all 31 or 30 teams at the time when I worked there, maybe 32, who knows. But it's changed in that respect, but I think it's like a simple art to be able to call games nationally, and that's what really set him apart, I thought, from others. But he paved the way for everybody. Every call you hear today is started sub-templates from Bob Cole.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And you hear even announcers today talking about like growing up watching him, just like he grew up watching someone, right? There's always inspiration. So I always find it really cool. I had a chance to talk to Joe Buck when I was in St. Louis. I got to interview him. I used to do this 0 to 60
Yeah.
interview segment. And just hearing the way he grew up with his dad and thinking of Bob Cole, and he actually touched on Bob Cole around hockey and how he, thought he was amazing. So it's so cool to see not just inside of hockey, how he was respected across other sports and well known across the industry. So it's amazing. And obviously his calls will live on forever, but he had a great life and sad to see him go. But again, an honor that he was part of hockey and he grew our game.
Very well said. And so we dedicate this show to the life and times of Bob Cole. Buckle up for the Daily Faceoff Playoff Parlay Challenge. Hutch, each game day, answer 4 questions, pick the winning team, guess if points will be over or under, predict the first goal, and choose the highest scoring period. Gift cards will be up for grabs for daily winners. And each round, champion will pocket some hard-earned cash. Play today at games.dailyfaceoff.com. I don't know about you. It's been tough sledding so far for yours truly, betting wise, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. More on the props, man. There's just not many shots. I love my shot props. It's tough. It's a tough time of year to bet on that, I find.
It is, yeah, because you don't know what the game's going to go, right? So you see some of these games open up, but for the most part, it's pretty locked down and it's tight. And then some of these guys you are wanting to bet shot props on are getting the hardest matchups, and they have guys. My problem is the betting. It gets so tricky because of the stick work just gets so much higher. Like all of a sudden, it's like there's no time, no space, and it's like all the things that were called during the regular season, there's no dice on. So,
Yeah, the discipline's a big topic of conversation, of course, in these parts as we cover the Toronto Maple Leafs. But again, a pivotal Game 4 coming up on Saturday night at Scotiabank Arena, the extra day off. We're going to get into the comments of some of the head coaches. Of course, Jim Montgomery made the comment a couple days back, which was weird, the extra day off in Toronto. Poor guy, what is he going to do with his life? The playoffs are here. We are ready to bleed blue. Nation Gear is ready to gear you up for Toronto's playoff run. Rep your favorite team as they battle for the cup. Shop the exclusive Bleed Blue playoff tee and more at nationgear.ca. I believe we're going to give away 1 or 2 more, so stay tuned for that. And we got a big ticket giveaway as well coming up on the show today. Big stuff.
I know. I like that. I saw that bomb drop and I was pumped. I didn't know if since I'm in it, can I still win it though? I didn't know how that works.
Dude,
I'm just a co-host. I'm only a co-host. That's not fair. I think you and Rosie out, Vic out, me. Yeah, chance.
I don't think you're winning the tickets. I'm sorry, dude. And I don't know if your family's going to allow you to go to Boston. So first and foremost, shout out to one of our day one listeners. And I recall him from day one in the chat when we had 6 people watching and listening to this podcast. And now we've grown exponentially, of course. Mr. P-Mail Bacon, as you guys know him in the chat, one of the best. He has graciously donated 2 tickets to Game 5 in Boston on Tuesday. We're going to give those away on the show coming up on Monday. Isn't that crazy, though? Like, what a donation, man.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. Good for him. And I respect that, the fact that he is willing to do that. And he's been part of the show since the start. I love it. I love it. It's good stuff. There's good people out there. In a time where you don't really see stuff like this, there's still good people out there, my man.
Absolute legend. So just to be clear, there's no travel package involved here. It's just 2 tickets, and I say just, but 2 tickets to the game in Boston, Game 5, Tuesday night. Ideally, we're looking for 2 Leafs fans close to Boston, or by all means, I mean, if you want to travel down, go at it. Leafs Nation travels really, really well. It's a bit of a jaunt here from Toronto, of course, but we wanted to give these tickets away, and we hope that it is a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So that's what I want to stress. I mean, even if I'm going to tell you how you can win, just tell us you're a Leafs fan, please. Come on. We want Leafs fans in that building. We want to take over TD Garden coming up on Tuesday. So here's what you need to do. You got to make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube page. I'm sure most of you watching right now are at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at TLNDC. And then additionally, you need to provide an answer to this question and send that answer to LeafsMorningTake22@gmail.com. LeafsMorningTake22@gmail.com. Who has the most playoff hits in Leafs franchise history? Be mindful, the NHL began tracking that stat in 1997. So who has the most playoff hits in Leafs franchise history? LeafsMorningTake22@gmail.com. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at TLNDC and here on the YouTube page at the Leafs Nation 401. At random, Huts over the weekend will pick a winner and announce it on Monday's show. How about that?
That's awesome. That's exciting. It's awesome. I'm glad that you guys are able to do that, and the way you're going about it is awesome. And I don't even know the answer, so I don't even think I can win, but I have Google, so I can Google it.
Yeah, well, don't give people hints. Mr. P-Mill Bacon is in the chat right now. Have fun. Whoever wins, you're an absolute stud. Thank you once again for that generous donation, and thank you for being a day one fan. By the way, we've grown leaps and bounds, even dating back to our first show last year, where you had a very, very timid Jay Rosell. I'm like, dude, just be yourself, and he is certainly himself. So are you on this show, dude. You're an absolute star as well. So can't thank you enough, everybody in the chat. You guys are great. And to say thank you from us, we got two awesome guests today, man. Jamie McLennan's going to drop by in about 10. I want to do a bit of a roundtable. Obviously, both you former NHL netminders. And Randy Carlyle is going to drop by in about 35 minutes. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think he's done a hit in Toronto since he left. I know he's with Anaheim, the last destination he was at. So I was kind of jacked to get him on. Of course, Rosie played for him. I don't know how much I would read into the fact that Rosie is not here to do this, but it is what it is. We're looking forward to it.
No, it'd be good to get his take too, right? See how things change. And I feel like that's one of the coolest parts about being on this show and being part of this other side of media is these interviews and getting other people's takes. And, for years I've been around players and the game, but you never like actually ask like hard-hitting questions or actually get some feedback. And I find sometimes guys that are removed from the games, you hear so many good stories and different stuff. Like when we interviewed Mark Crawford, or we had, you get different people on. I feel like that's a great part of the game now. And I think with these platforms, podcasts or radio, whatever it is, you get more like the human side of people. You get other sides. Because, after the games, you get the media. Like I was horrible for that too, where even I've talked about Samsonov being very heartfelt, and how he felt, what he's going through. Like I would get a mic in my face and I'd be like, we tried our best. Maybe we'll get them next game. Because I was always scared to say something that would like mess up my career, or I would do something because I was always like fearful of, all those other sides of it, where now it's nice to get the real hard hitting questions out there and get some answers. It's fun. I think you guys do a great job, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Very conditioned. You are right. Most athletes are. That's why you watch McDavid. He's been conditioned since he was 13. I remember covering John Tavares in junior hockey. He's the same John Tavares on the mic. Very conditioned from a very, very young age. At the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe here on YouTube, hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. I know some of you lately have left us a 5-star review. Really, really appreciate that. So keep those coming wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, the LeafsNation.com has you covered on the very latest surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs as we get set for Game 4 coming up on Saturday night at Scotiabank Arena. This opening segment is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. Today is the big day, my friends. I mentioned we were at the soft launch last night. It was fantastic. The grand opening tonight, 590 King Street West. Greta Bar YYZ will act as your go-to spot for all the hockey playoffs and baseball coverage you can handle, whether you're pre-gaming, looking to watch the big game, post-gaming, or just looking to dust your friends off at some arcade games. Greta Bar YYZ will have you covered with delicious eats, which they have, by the way. We tried a bunch of stuff last night, and thirst-quenching drinks. I tried a couple of those as well. So go big. Go to Greta Bar YYZ as we kick off the conversation, Huts, with some injury news. Yesterday, Elliot Friedman confirming the migraine situation when it comes to Nylander. We brought that up on the show the other day, of course, but no official diagnosis. Like that's why, for those of you who watched the show the other day, it was hard to sort of describe what was transpiring behind the scenes because the migraine was so severe that they were doing concussion testing. But what do you phrase it? At this point, it doesn't matter. The guys missed 3 games, concussion, migraine. there's hope, I would say, that he could play tomorrow in Game 4.
Yeah, you gotta hope. I think there is hope, but you feel for the guy. I know there's a lot of abuse that gets thrown his way, but this is a guy that's a warrior, right? He's played a ton of games. Like you look at this last season, he doesn't miss games. He plays through everything, and it's not like he's had a bad playoff, or it's not like he's trying to avoid having a bad playoff so he doesn't get the contract. He has the contract. He has everything. Trust me, this guy wants to play, wants to win. So you have to feel for him being out at the most important time of year. And trust me, like they're doing everything in their power to get him on the ice because I've been in the locker room. I've been part of this. He's not sitting out just to be safe. Like there's actually something going on, and I feel for him. And it's tough, especially in this market. And, people can attack you. And there's obviously a lot of good too. There's people that defend Nylander, but sometimes the negative outweighs the good. And, for me, I hope he comes back soon.
We need some deliberation, by the way, because Sharon McAlpine makes a really good point in the chat. We're in Canada. It's YYZ. My mistake. But I'm going to go with YYZ. I think it rings better.
Yeah, whatever. That's close.
You're like, just move on. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I think when it comes to Nylander, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I called him the modern day Phil Kessel in terms of Iron Man, and he plays a heavier game than Kessel. Like he's come a long way. I'm excited to see if he, in fact, plays in this series. I do think, obviously, he can be a difference maker. In fact, I think he can put him over the top in this series. Like they're missing a Nylander, especially a player of that ilk. The way he drives a line in himself, I think that opens up more time and space for potentially a Marner. I think it helps the power play. It's pretty crazy. One singular player, and maybe this is why they paid him 11 and a half sheets a season. He is so vital to the success of this team. We're finding it out very, very difficult here.
It is, right? And there are guys that are just better players. Like it's so wild to think. They can just change a game in so many facets. And like you touched on, it's not necessarily just getting points. It's creating space. It's drawing attentions. It's matchups. There's so many other elements that go into a game that he creates. And you think getting him back in the lineup at home where you have the change, you can set the matchup is super important. And a guy like him, he takes such good care of himself. And the way he looked in those skates on the ice, he looks very good. So this isn't like an injury in the sense of like, he's got a broken wrist and he's coming back. It's just his head, right? Like I shouldn't say it's just his head, but in the sense of physically, he's ready to go. So as long as he's healthy and he can control the migraines, I think he steps right in and doesn't miss a beat, in my opinion.
So, assuming Nylander plays on Saturday, where do you slot him into that lineup? Because obviously there's the whole Mitch Marner conversation we can have too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you get him back. Like maybe you try to slot Marner down a bit, move him out. I don't know, Nikki. This is a tough fit right now because I think you can't touch the Matthews line, in my opinion. I feel like they're just absolutely playing the best hockey. But you have to get him in there. Maybe you get him with Marner. I'm not too sure how you make that work, Nick. I don't know. You're a better line projector than me. But for my standpoint, I think if it's spread out, it might be harder for Boston to match up against it. And then you're going to get teams like maybe you get a line that's a little more tired trying to match up against Matthews' line because Nylander's going.
Yeah, it's funny how like Nylander could be the key to everything. Like I truly do feel he comes back. Maybe it gets Marner going. Maybe it gets the power play going. Bottom line, they just need him back in the series, and I think the extra day off is pivotal for that. Right, just another day of recovering. I think it's been over a week now, dating back to last Wednesday or Tuesday when all this came to fruition. But I just think from a matchup game too, I think it lengthens the Maple Leafs lineup too to have a Nylander wherever you want to put him in that lineup. I'd be curious too to see who comes out. There hasn't really been much on Bob McMahon either. The lower body injury hasn't been ruled out for the series, but I think as we keep going here, it's going to be tough to add a guy this late in the series when he hasn't played in 3 to 4 weeks. But I think ultimately, to me, I think Nick Robertson would be the guy. I think you would look at Holmberg. Those are probably the two guys that would come out if Nylander comes in. No.
It'd have to be, I would assume, right? And I just think again, like having that first, second, third line all with like threats changes the game plan for Boston on how you're going to attack it, especially with the unknown of what Nylander brings. Because he steps into the lineup and all of a sudden it's going to draw attention. Granted, he was out. You don't know what game he's going to bring. And everyone knows how dangerous he is, how he controls the play. So now if you get a matchup where they're just so worried about Nylander, maybe Marner gets it a little easier. Maybe he finds his game, gets a little more space. the Matthews line is always going to draw the most attention, right? That's just standard. They're the line that's going to beat you right now. So I love the spread out. I would assume like Robertson has been getting chances. Like maybe he comes out or Holmberg. I don't know, because the fourth line's played well. It's tricky, right? And obviously Bobby McMahon is another piece that you would like to see. But at this point, getting late in this series, realistically, Leafs to win in 6 or 7, like how do you bring him into the lineup in a game 6 or a game 7? Like that's where it gets tricky, right? Because you're already like, you're trying to catch a moving train. You're 6 games away from playoff hockey that you've never played in before in your career.
That's exactly it. Curious to get your sort of breakdown on what we've seen thus far. From the lines, like the fourth line in particular has been such a revelation where like you can argue they've been the most consistent trio, which again, I said this on the show the other day, it's hilarious, but it's also great. Like I love the identity they play with, the heaviness, like they just have been bringing it. And you're so bang on with the top line too. Like Max Domi has been very, very noticeable. Matthews, Bertuzzi, like they're doing their jobs. They just got to get the middle guys going now.
Yeah, for sure. And this is like a tale as old as time, right? Your fourth line is usually your shot, like you're going to play good minutes, they bang. I think fourth lines usually have an easier time in the playoffs. In my experiences in the playoff, is the fact that the game becomes more their style of game. Everything tightens up. Everything is banging. It's less skill work. You get away with a little more. So they could just focus on their strength of running around, making hits, keeping it simple, where the skill guys have a lot more work to do because the time and space is eliminated. And for me, you look at any team that gets it done, it's the fact that they have second or third line, somebody's going. You need to get that depth scoring. You even look at like Florida last night, get some goals from the fourth line. These are the difference makers in games. And if you go back through the Leafs' last 9 playoff games, 2 goals. Then the game they won in Boston, 3. Then other than that, it's 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Right. And when you look at their scoring through the year, they're 3.63 goals for per game. And all of a sudden that drops off. So now where are you going to make that up when realistically you got to have someone going that is going to step up and have a big playoff. And they haven't had that yet.
This is an honest question, and maybe it's like insensitive because I have no clue about making babies. But do guys actually plan around the NHL schedule and having kids? Because Ilya Lyubushkin just welcomed his 3rd kid like on Tuesday during the playoffs.
Oh, I don't think so.
No?
Maybe. I sure didn't. I don't know. I was just trying to get lucky when I could. So
Fair.
honestly, I don't know. Maybe some people do. We never strategically planned it. Our first was when we were just like going to have our little guy. We had him during the season. My son was in November and I had a few days off, but that was, once we got married, we're like, when we get pregnant, we get pregnant. Then our daughter, we actually planned and it worked out. She was in June. So that worked out pretty good, but both American babies, dual citizens. Take advantage
I love
of
that. I didn't even think about that. But I think the great thing with Lyubushkin, though, is like the new kid bump. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just plays like a man possessed on Saturday.
Yeah, you always see that, right? Like, I feel like that's something maybe even like, or if someone in your family passes away, you see that a lot. Guys come back to the lineup and they have big games and, you're playing for a lot more of that case. So, and trust me, he is a proud family man. Like I love that guy. We did a bunch of, when we were in Arizona, we'd take our kids dirt biking, these dirt biking tracks. He was like a nail gun. He would run with his kids. He's a great dad. The other thing that he is, his kid, we got to keep an eye out for his kid, because I know he plays hockey in Anaheim. I don't know if they're moved into Toronto yet, but he would wipe out on his bike and he would just get up, and Bush wouldn't say nothing to him. He would just stare at him and like he'd be about to cry. And the kid wouldn't cry. He'd just pick his bike back up and start riding. It was just like the Russian, where I'd be over like, my kid's like, oh, he needs a sucker, a Gatorade, and nail gun, absolute nail guns.
Good reminder to go check out our interview from, what was it, a couple months back with Lyubushkin when he first was reacquired by the Maple Leafs. That was a lot of fun, but seems like a quality cat and a great teammate, and certainly a guy who needs to step up. Before we bring in Noodles, would you make any changes to the lineup in Game 4?
No, I don't think so right now. I feel like you got to go with it. It was a good game, right? They had their chances. It's more just trying to get past Swayman at this point, I feel. And you just need the saves from their goalie, right? At the end of the day, like, that Frederick goal cannot go in. That is playoff hockey. And no matter what anyone wants to say, I know Samsonov has played well, but this is the playoffs. When's the last time outside of Darcy Kemper in Colorado, when do teams make it to the cup or win the cup without the goalie being in the Conn Smythe conversation or one of the best players? It's just the way hockey works. Your goalie has to be your best player.
And of course, I remember back to 2003, J.S. Chigurh. We had him on the show last year. That's your pretty much inspiration right there. We're going to get deeper into this goalie conversation. I love this, man. This interview is brought to you by Douglas, named Canada's best mattress in Canadian living. Douglas is loved by more than 200,000 Canadians, and they're backed by over 10,000 five-star reviews. Every mattress order comes with a free comfort sleep bundle, 2 memory foam pillows with pillow protectors, 1 luxurious cotton sheet set, and 1 mattress protector. Order today at douglas.ca/LMT. That's douglas.ca/LMT as we bring in Jamie McLennan. What's going on, Noodles?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you to be along with us. Obviously, the extra day off. Does that help Ilya Samsonov, you think?
I think it does, but if he's a guy who gets distracted by noise, as you know, this market is very noisy. So I don't think he's a guy that sits and scrolls through Twitter and Instagram and memes and all of these things. But I would say, Carter, you've probably been through it a little bit more than me as far as starts and stuff like that. But the extra day is going to help the body. Does it help the mind? When you're coming off a loss, that would be my only concern, because as much as Ilya's found this like Zen, since coming back, he when you talk to, or when you've seen his media, it's like, I don't look back, I look forward, all of that. That could all be just a fake it to make it type of ruse, because I lived that life. When you're dying inside, you can't protrude that to everybody else. So the extra day, I think, is going to help everybody as far as just kind of a reset. But you're only as good as your last game, and if your last game is a loss, then you're dying to get back out there and to make amends for it.
Yeah, Noodles, I agree. At times the rest is good. And then there's times I found during my career when you're rolling, like, just keep them coming. You kind of get in a flow state. But for me, a little bit of a sign is, he's walking into the same game wearing the same suit, like trying to do the same thing. And for me, it just seems a little bit of mental weakness, because that stuff doesn't matter. But on the flip side, that extra day now for the Bruins, do you think we see Swayman again with him, because he kind of stays more in his schedule, instead of the rotation?
I think we could, but the problem is, if you're being realistic, okay, and coaches aren't realistic, and believe me, we've all been in this room where you're weighing out, you overthink it. It's paralysis by overanalysis. So guaranteed the goalie coach is going, and Bob Ascens is a great goalie coach, saying, okay, you can go back with Swayman. But then you're being realistic and going, okay, did you think you were going to win 2 on the road, or were you happy with the split and to bring it back home? So part of me thinks, start Allmark. And if he wins, now you're going back to the guy who's undefeated on home ice, and he's well rested. To me, it's almost like the Jedi mind screw, where it's like, okay, you're in a position of strength here. You've just gotten back home ice. Now, do you try and go at it with Swayman? And what happens if Swayman has an off night? Now you're going to go to Allmark, or you're going to go, back to Swayman again? Like, to me, there's a lot of different scenarios. The easy one for Boston is to go, we're going Allmark, and we plan that for the first 4 games, and then we're going to see how it unfolds after that. But Swayman's been so good. And the thing is Allmark was really good too. Like, I thought he was great. Like, you can't fault him for those goals against. He made the unreal save on Yarncroke, where they pulled that off the goal line. The Bertuzzi goal was a high stick, legitimately. So and Matthews, that game-winning goal, there's not a lot of people are making that save. So you could argue and say, okay, well, maybe Swayman makes that Matthews breakaway save. Well, maybe he doesn't make that glove save on Yarncroke that Allmark made. So to me, part of me, I don't know why, part of me thinks we're going to see Allmark. And it just might be like, hey, if this guy can steal one on the road for us, we're going home with a guy who's undefeated and feeling great about his game. But logically, it should be Swayman. That's it.
I know this is a rare situation where I think you look at Boston and they have 2 number 1 goalies, and I guess their backup, quote unquote, if you want to call him that, is a Vezina winner from last year. But to me, Noodles, this just reinforces the fact that the Maple Leafs need to figure out what they're going to do long term. Like, Joe Woll, we think is going to be the guy. Do you think it reinforces the fact that this summer, as soon as this summer, they got to figure out somebody long term that's going to make a lot of sense? I know easier said than done, but to me, it's like a come to Jesus type moment.
100%. Tell me a general manager that sleeps at night when they don't trust what's going on in net. There's about 8 general managers in the league that comfortably go to sleep at night going, regardless of how they play, Hellebuck's my guy, Vasilevsky's my guy, Demko, obviously the injury to Demko, but he's a number one, clear cut, Markstrom, again. And then you start to go, okay, here's my tandem, which I think is good, but the Edmonton Oilers started the season with Skinner and Campbell, and all of a sudden Campbell's in the minors, and they bring up Pickard, and Pickard stabilizes, and they have to shift their plan to go, Skinner, you're our guy. We're going to sink or swim with you, and Stewart's got to have a big game ahead of him here tonight because it's there's still question marks with him. So the bottom line is yes, I do believe whatever happens here, unless they go on this crazy run and go to the finals or win a cup, that position has to have stability. And Brad Treliving, believe me, he likes stability. That's a reason why he went and got Markstrom in Calgary. And I would argue that he's probably going to have that, thought process here, but you need the money to do it. And there's not a ton of money to do it.
Yeah, for sure, Noodles. His hands are tied. And again, we can hope, what Samsonov went through this year is going to help him get through these ups and downs of the playoff run. But for me, obviously, there's been the talk of Nylander, what's gone on with him, what's going on behind the scenes, and getting him back and in the lineup. Where does that put the Leafs? Does that make them more of a threat here, trying to, win at home here and then go into Boston and win a game?
It does. I think he's not riding in on a white horse with a cape, but he's a hell of a player. And when you have a hell of a player out of your lineup, it certainly affects, because if you were looking at it the way it was set up, if Nylander was going to be on your third line, what that does is get him away from matchups, and gives you an offensive threat on three different lines. What it also does is I think it gives the power play a different dynamic as well, because he's really good on the power play. I know Mitch Marner, lots been talked about him, but you add in a guy like Nylander who holds on to the puck, who makes plays, who has a good one-timer threat from the offside. So all of a sudden now you've got Matthews on his offside and Nylander on his offside. That's just another threat on the power play that has gone 1-11. So yes, having him back in, not only I think just from a psyche standpoint for the group, but from a threat standpoint of how good he's been and how good he can be. If you get him back in, obviously it's a different threat. But what we've seen Boston is they're really good at adjustments. They lose one game, two defensemen come in. Now, one was injured because Andrew Peeke, that was an injury play, but Greshlik comes out because they want Lohi or whatever his name is. I'm butchering his name, and I shouldn't, because he deserves a little bit more respect. But yeah, they bring a bigger kid in who's got a little bit more bite to him, and and Wotherspoon comes in who's got a little bit more bite than Greshlik. But those are adjustments, and they're like, hey, we're going to bring in guys who've never played in the playoffs before on the road and see if they can hold up. And oh, by the way, our old friend JVR comes in, and he gets a partial breakaway and a full breakaway. And he looked quite dangerous for a guy who's, games at the, at the tail end. We'll call it that.
You're right. Adjustments automatically, I think, is Sheldon Keefe. Curious to get your opinion on where they're at with Sheldon Keefe. Where are you at as him as a Maple Leafs coach? I mean, you can't help but look and see names like Joe Quenneville out there. Craig Berube's out there. There's some really quality guys out there. But where are you at right now at Sheldon Keefe?
I mean, the one thing I've liked near the end of the season with him is he's just said, to hell with it, I'm going to speak my mind. Whereas in past years, if he's been sharp, it was almost a retraction the next day. And like, I didn't mean it that way. And, I did, Mitch has been good, or Willie's been this and that. Where this year, he's just like, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, especially in the last couple of months. He's just been, this is what I see. This is my analysis. I don't care if I'm hurting feelings. I'm going to do it my way. He's in a tough position, but on home ice, you should be dealing from a position of strength. And you've got Austin Matthews on your lineup, and Mitch Marner needs to play better, but you've got, some depth there. You've got some players. That being said, there are names that are scary out there. You're right. Craig Berube. I heard a name yesterday. People forget about this. Rod Brind'Amour does not have a contract next year.
I heard it's in a drawer, Noodles. I heard it's in a drawer in Carolina, by the way.
Well, if it's in a drawer, then you should dust it off and make sure he signs it, because I'm telling you, if I'm an organization, if I'm the Ottawa Senators, teams like that the owner has deep pockets and is very committed to turning the corner, Rod Brindamore's name should be at the top of the list if he's not under contract with Carolina. But if it's in the drawer, I get it. But if it's not in the drawer, man, oh man, that should be a huge offer. But there are some great coaches available. Joel Quenneville, I was texting with him the other day. I don't know if you guys saw, he did his first interview with Andy Strickland out of St. Louis, and I watched that. And you know what? I think he did a great job because, there's some things, obviously, he's going to have to deal with it head on. He made mistakes. He admits it. But he also says, hey, I was trying to win a Stanley Cup. I didn't realize I should have asked more questions. I should have done this. There's a lot of coulda, shoulda. But if he gets another opportunity, he's a hell of a coach. So, if Keefe doesn't have the success, I'm sure there would be changes everywhere. But it's not just going to be to the coach. They'll look at that roster, and I think it'll finally be, hey, we're going to have to tinker with some of the things that we've really stuck with. So, it's only 2-1 in the series, so a lot can change, and we could be talking about this a week from now or 2 weeks from now, and they've had success. Yeah,
there's always going to be that pressure, especially when you're coaching in Toronto, and and all these coaches deal with it, right? They're under the microscope, and everyone, it's short term. But for this Leafs team at home, what do they need to do at Scotiabank? And from a fan perspective, they took some heat for the crowd, especially comparatively to the rest of the league. What do you expect here from this game 4, from the Leafs and from the fans?
Well, okay, so I saw that, and Joe Bowen was worked up about it on Twitter and said, hey, we need to be better. Okay. So how about this? The building is on fire because Bertuzzi gets the goal off his skate and off Lindholm. Don't give up a goal 28 seconds later. Like, be better in your own zone, and don't be a mess where you give up a dangerous player, a high quality shot from a high quality area. Like, that would be my, you want to keep that momentum going and the building popping. Don't give up bad goals or timely goals against. That would be one thing. Yes, they'll always be. It's never going to change. Carter, you've played in this building. I've played in this building. Nick, you've been there a million times. It's corporate in certain areas, and it's not corporate in other areas. If you went one level up, there's a bunch of goons in there that'll give you, the shirt off their back because, and I say that respectfully, like they're the passionate fan. And then you go down to the Platinums, and they're a passionate fan, but they happen to be wearing a $3,000 suit, and because they've got deeper pockets. It's just, this fan base is massive. They travel well. You go down to Buffalo, it's just a different part of the fan base that shows up there. You go into Edmonton, you go into Vancouver, right across throughout the league. They show up well, Leaf fans. So it's hard to criticize them in their own building, but I would come back to the team and go, give them something to cheer about. And then I think they'll be fine. And to me, Saturday night, it'll be a Saturday night, an 8:00 game that gives everybody an extra hour to have some beers and enjoy themselves. I think you'll see a lively game. And the Leafs can do themselves some favors by scoring first and keeping a lead and really being involved in the game, because it was kind of a tale of two games last game where the crowd was in it and then they were out of it, very quickly because some of the goals against.
Yeah, people need to be horned up for this one. And I mentioned on the pod, I was there for game 1, man. I've never sat. I was in the highest row of the building. Like, some of the mutants you just mentioned up there, I mentioned it. This guy threw a beer at a Bruins fan as the game ended, and this thing went flying. It was a full beer. What a waste of $35.
Yeah, $35. Like, at least in Edmonton, they call them heroin beer, where you have one and you don't remember how you got home. Like, that's like that's the one thing in Alberta. I don't know why. It's the joke is like the beer at the rinks at the Calgary Saddle Dome and at Rogers Center in Edmonton. You have 4, and it's like you are Bernie Lomax heading home. They're carrying you out of there. So I don't condone throwing beer, but you mentioned the passionate fan, the grit grinders up there, man. They come to play. They got their game faces on. They're all business. So you got to give them something to cheer for. That's the way I say it.
Absolutely wild. And again, I know it's a running bit on your show. I was texting with Hayes last night. I'm like, dude, are you going to the game on Saturday? Because I know which way I'm betting if he goes, right?
Yeah. Oh, this poor guy. Like, I laugh because I know people. I know Leaf fans that literally wear the same shirt, sit in the same spots, because they believe that that's what controls, the outcome of the game. We were joking about that front cover of the the Toronto Sun, where it's like, okay, where's Mitch Marner, the invisible man? And if he scored 3 last game, like somehow they would be like, we did that. We're the ones we put up. We're the ones that called him out, and he did it. Like, that's not the case. As players, you know how it's going. We're our own worst critics. There's a reason why you play in the NHL is you self-evaluate, you continue to work at your game. You don't need front covers that are just chewing on you. It's just to me it's extra noise. But that being said, yeah, if Hayes shows up, there might be a mutiny. I don't know. I don't think he's allowed at the rink on Saturday.
Lock the doors. You're the best, man. Really, really enjoy your time today. Enjoy the game tomorrow, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Anytime.
Thanks, Noodles.
One of the best, Jamie Noodles, McLennan hopping on. Those guys do a tremendous job. Love all three of them. And even the guys who fill in do a great job. Al's brother, I'm buddies with. Hit King Street West sometimes with him. There's a lot of them. So we appreciate Noodles hopping on the show, man. That just last night caught up to me there.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah, no. That was
That's
funny.
the one thing you don't get about broadcasting. Some people, like, articulating is difficult, right? Like I remember at the beginning of my career, it's like you almost feel the need to cover every breath, if that makes sense. And that's why Bob McCown, I thought, was one of the best, the way he articulated, and to do a show by yourself like that's crazy good, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I feel like even now that I've done more, I've learned to like calm down. Like I can sometimes be like, get going. Like I feel like I have to say every point within the minute. And then you start to like calm down and just be yourself more naturally. And thinking about when I was at TSN and I talked with Rod Smith, he made a comment to me about have a thought, but don't think about the words. Like, don't be like thinking about, I have to say this word or the words that's going to get me there. Just have your thought, your idea, and then just kind of work your way there. And I think it's helped me a lot because at times I get caught up, right? But I'm also new to it. And a lot of these guys have done it forever, but it's been a lot of fun. And Noodles is one of the best. I love him. He's always been great to me throughout my career too.
Sir Blablaws writes in, send Nick to rehab. Yeah, it's sort of funny. I stumbled upon the phrase King Street West, which I bring up 17 times on this podcast on a daily basis. Make sure you check out Greta Bar YYZ. And I'm playing injured today. I don't know if it's injured or hurt, but those are the best shows to do, man. Like, you're even more fired up. You're ready to go. The extra day off is eating away at me a bit. We have Randy Carlisle, by the way, coming up in about 5 minutes. But curious to get your thoughts, Huts, on the gamesmanship. Jim Montgomery and Sheldon Keefe going back and forth, the commentary the last couple of days. At least we have some stories to talk about.
No, yeah, for sure. It goes on all the time. Everyone is looking for a call or just trying to plant the seed. It almost is comical at times, right? Like even Montgomery complaining about being in Toronto for that long, about Max Domi bumping him, like Swayman flops. Like, trust me, I've played hockey my whole life, been the goalie, and I've been the goalie at times that's dialed in that like teams just do stuff, right? A guy comes at you, he tells you suck or whatever he does. They try to bump you, they squirt you with a water bottle. Like, you don't care. Like, Swayman sells it too. Like, don't get me wrong, that's the biggest dive I've ever seen. And he knows Domi's there. He could have easily just like veered around him, done whatever. He engaged in it too. It's part of the game. It's not a big deal, but I love the coaches this time of year. They're even Maurice last night on the bench was getting interviewed and he was talking about getting a call. Like, he's like planting a seed loud enough to try to get something. So I find it funny, the gamesmanship that goes on, but I love it. That's part of the game. That's part of the playoffs. They're playing chess right now. This is it. And if maybe one time you could get something out there that gets in a ref's head that, you're getting screwed or everything's been going their way, and then maybe that is in his head because they are humans that do it. Until it's the eye in the sky, the gamesmanship will continue.
Hey, do guys talk about that in the room? Like, Sheldon Keefe makes the comments the other night. Are guys like, oh, did you hear what Keefe said yesterday? Like, do guys pay attention to that type of stuff?
No, not necessarily. Maybe if something comes out but if it's about the other team, I don't think anyone cares. But trust me, it's not just Sheldon Keefe. Like, guys on the bench are giving it to the ref too. They're like, Did you see that? That's BS. Or like, we've had 5 penalties and they have 2, right? Like, the Bruins players are complaining about that. Trust me, like at the start of the game, Marchand's going over the ref and being like, yeah, last game they had 5. We only had 2, eh? Like, we got to kind of even this up. Like, and the refs all tell you to beat it, but it's all just in the hope that maybe for the slight second, it's in their head. And then there's a moment during the game where it could go either way and they make a bad call.
It's just more so like, even when you hear a coach chirp his own player, or say, we need more from this guy. Like, for example, last week when Keefe makes the comment about Nylander taking a week off to end the season, like he was there, but he wasn't really there kind of comment. Like, would Nylander see that? Would guys see that? Would guys start talking about that in the room or?
Yeah, if it's a bad one for sure, or if times there will be like another member will bring it up. So then
Yeah.
you'll be getting interviewed, and they'll be like, "Did you see what Sheldon Keefe said about you? How you suck right now?" And then the mic's in your face, and you're like, "Oh man, that kind of sucks." Because I had one time actually that sticks out for me. We were doing video in Nashville, and I gave up a questionable goal, and Barry Trotz in the video was like, "We need a save here, Huts," right? Like in front of the whole team. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm a grown man. I can take it. Then after the meeting, he came to me and he was like, "Hey, sorry to call you out, but like, I'm like, yeah, it's okay." He's like, "I'll never do it in the media." And then when I was playing in Carolina, I gave up a couple stinkers. We lost 2-1, and I wasn't bad. This is when Rene was out, and he called me out in the media. And I remember a few of the boys and like our PR guy came up to me, be like, "Hey, don't check Twitter." Because he said, like, this goaltending's not good enough. Like, you can't win with
Wow.
this goaltend. Like, roasted me. And I didn't even play that bad. I gave up like, it was Alexander Semin, like, banked one off me, like,
He
brutal
was
goal. But,
nasty. Yeah.
and then I was like, and then the next day, Trotz like called me in, and I was just more like bullshit because like you had said that you would say it to my face, not to the media. And it actually like made us stronger. Like, honestly, it lit a fire under my ass, and then I played way better. But each time I used to play and win, I almost had that like FU mentality to him because I was like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And I'd assume, looking back on my career now, like Barry Trotz knew what he was doing too, right? Like, don't get me
Sure.
wrong. These are veteran guys. Like, he lit a fire under me, but you have to know your player. You have to know that there's a day and age where some players need to be coddled, where I was a guy that like needed to be challenged. Like, when I had it cushy, I struggled. I needed to be the one, like Noodles touched on, self-evaluating, because I was never a star. I was never like a silver spooner. I was wanted to be a dog all the time. I needed stuff to
Yeah.
work on, get better, get better. So there's always that give and take, but you're exposed to it. But I think different guys know how to control it better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think coaching in this day and age has changed obviously a lot, and just sort of how you attack it. Like even here in Toronto, there's some alphas, there's some dogs like that, but then there's some other players where like you have to handle them a bit differently. And like I think that's the unique aspect of coaching a roster that big is like you got to know every person individually and also comprehend and understand how it works, like big picture, right? And I think every coach is guilty of it, but you have your favorites too. I mean, guess who Sheldon Keefe's favorite is? It's Calle Yarncroke, right? I mean, it's pretty simple to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. And that, like, guys that are coaches always like guys that can go over the wall in any situation and get the job done. And back to that, what you touched on, how there's different personalities. When I played in Arizona, I think this is something that's going to be more common now. Andre Tournier in Arizona, we actually did a personality test. It went
Really?
through, it was like hundreds and hundreds of questions and dissected your personality. And there was 4 different categories. It was like an influencer, competitiveness, compassionate, and one other one. I'm sure somebody might know in the chat better than I remember. But so then what he did is he broke down everybody into categories and explained what each player was. And we actually worked with like a sports psychologist and with Andre, we call him Bear. His nickname was Bear. So Bear, what he wanted to know is how to approach players. So if I think I was an influencer and I was like motivated through, like just like if you could be hard on me, and then different players you didn't need to be. So he actually wanted to know the actual breakdown of his players, so he knew if he was having a closed door meeting with someone, how to approach them and get more out of them, instead of like just coming down hard on a guy knowing that his personality, that's not going to translate. They actually wanted us to get to a point where we had binders where we could go and, like, if I had a problem with you, Nick, and you were playing defense, but this was your personality, I actually had an idea of how to approach you, instead of being like just come at you and telling you to F off, where that's just going to make you want to fight back, or you're going to go into your shell, or whatever your personality was. So I like the idea. A lot of guys struggled with that because we're still just athletes and it's hard to get your brain around that. But I love the idea of what Andre Tournier and the Coyotes were trying to do, to get a better understanding of like what's going to be best for the group as individuals.
Man, did you see that comment he made as he landed in Utah? It's like, oh, if it feels like we're back in the NHL, like what absolute shade. But it must have been a disaster playing in that barn the last couple of years. So I get it, especially when you're a National League coach and you're going to that.
Yeah, 100%, right? I never spent any time at the Mullet, but even when it was in Glendale, like it was just a bit of a joke. And the best part is though, like for me, I think they're gonna succeed there. Like Armstrong, like Bill Armstrong is so
He's
smart,
good.
and
Yeah.
he's built such a good, like, out of all the teams I went for, went for. That's really good there. We're working on it. A work in
Close
progress,
enough.
guys. They have such a good understanding of like players and needs and like open door and sports science. And like, he's done a great job of like, I think because he has so much experience and on a limited budget, like the Leafs, don't get me wrong. The Leafs have everything, but they also have a budget that's humongous, where now with the Smiths and in Utah, I think there's going to be way more money. And with the amount of draft picks they have and the future this potential team could have, they could be a very dangerous team very soon. And I think what Bill Armstrong's built there is really good. And again, with Andre Tournier, he gets guys to buy in, man. He gets guys to play the right way and be part of a team. And I think they're going to be dangerous soon, especially now with deeper pockets.
Yeah, exactly it. Free agency is going to be very, very unique because they're actually going to be able to spend money and not like bargain shop for once, which I think will be fascinating. But we look ahead, of course, Huts, to Game 4 here on Saturday. What are some things you're looking at? For me, it's the power play, man. Like Boston's power play is outscoring Toronto 5-1, so that's a big thing. And goaltending. I mean, we've talked about that a lot on today's show. Swayman and Allmark have been really good, namely Swayman now 5-0 this season. I just think what would be your game plan, obviously, to try to make life more difficult for the Bees netminder or whoever it is?
It's got to be traffic, right? It's got to be traffic and shots from the point. I feel like even at times in that game, I know he made a big save on Bertuzzi where it was the puck ended up sitting right in the slot. He made a right pad save where he extended out. And it all started because Morgan Riley got a shot in from the top. Like if you can get shots in from like a prime area. So I feel like for me, getting pucks wide, getting pucks to the top and then to the net, it doesn't need to be hard. It just needs to be sifters with traffic. It creates chaos. And it might not be that initial shot. It'll be after that. It will be the fact that the puck got through, there's rebounds, it creates chaos. And I just didn't see that enough, especially when a goalie's feeling it. When a goalie is feeling it, trust me, if he can see it, he's going to stop. And I think that's where their game plan needs to be. And then obviously the power play. Like that is just, that's the elephant in the room for me, right? Going 0 for 5. And then I think moving forward is, if you look at the other end with goaltending, Samsonov needs to play well like he has, but the goal that Frederick scored on him can't go in. Every goal that goes in needs to be a top-notch goal. It can't be any softer. He can't be getting beat clean. This is the NHL playoffs. And because realistically, they're not scoring 5 or 6. It's just like, if you look at the stats and the patterns, it just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to break through in this series. So it needs to be tight checked and obviously won in that sense.
Sadly, I just don't have that faith that Samsonov's not going to let another stinker in. Like, he's let a couple, but I give him credit too, because he's made some really quality saves. But that's what hurts you, and you're bang on, and you know this, having played the position at the highest level. That just kills your team, man. Like, crippling goals. And I think you look at Boston. Is there maybe one? Maybe I can't even think of a goal that's shouldn't have gone in. And there's just been way too many of these moments, and that's why people were concerned. That's why that's been the messaging around the brain trust, if you want to call it that, regarding the position. It's so hard to solidify, but I think Noodles made the point too, that I think they're going to look at this and be like, what do we have here? I don't think Samsonov's the answer. I don't think he's coming back.
No, I agree. And I feel like it's one of those things where at some point you need to get someone that you can trust too, right? Like, again, he
but it's
went
tough
through
to
so
get, right? You can't just say
it is.
yeah,
It is 100%. You don't go like these guys that he touched on, like Vasilevsky, Hellebuck,
hard,
guy Demko. There's certain guys that you can't get in free agency. And if you do, they're usually later in their career. It's a little hard to come by. They need to be like homegrown and developed. That's why I still believe that Joseph Wall has more of an upside than Samsonov. I just think Samsonov's at his peak, where I think Joseph Wall can still grow and still get better. I think that injury really set him back this year. I'd assume this will be a big summer for him. And this might not be the last we've seen of Joseph Wall, depending on how this playoffs go. But I also feel that without a goalie, are you ever really a contender? Like, I know you can get lucky, you can strike lightning in a bottle and get a guy that gets hot. But usually at that, you have a pretty supreme team in front of you. Like the year Binnington won, he was really good one game, really bad the other game. Same thing. Matt Murray at times would be bad, and then he'd be good. But Pittsburgh and those teams could score a lot of goals, which makes a big difference.
I'm just wondering, like, the leash too. Like, how do you feel with Sammy? Like, do you think they're close to making a determination that they need to switch goalies, or it's like ride or die with Samsonov? Do you have any feel anyway?
I don't know. At this point, honestly, I think like maybe if he gives up a couple like tough ones early or something, it changes. But I think you have to kind of ride or die with him at this point. I feel like it would be harder. Like, say if you went to Wall, like say if game 4 doesn't go good and it's like he's played average or not at best, and then you're trying to start Joseph Woll in Boston, like that's a high risk, right? I feel like you're really exposed to it, and a lot of times there's self-preservation that goes on too, where it's like, well, he was our guy. This is the goalies that I was given. We had to play him because he hadn't played, blah, blah, blah. Where if you go out on a limb and you make an odd start, where Montgomery obviously has done that, playing Allmark, but if Keefe goes and starts Woll, say in game 5, and he plays brutal, then it's like that's on you because Samsonov obviously has the skill of getting back, you know?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think Samsonov has played well enough where we're later in the series where it's like if you're making that determination, then I think you're obviously going to be in big time trouble. Having said that, Huts, it to me it depends on game 4. Like, let's hope they win. I expect a monster Maple Leafs bounce back effort, if you want to call it that, because I thought they were pretty good in game 3. Execution's the big story for me. Let's say, I mean, if they go down 3-1, I would not be shocked if they try to, switch the juju up a bit and go with Joseph Woll. Like, I do think they believe in him, and I think you look at Woll, I know his play down the stretch wasn't great, but he's the type of guy you can see in your head, you put a Woll in there and he can go on a crazy run. I just have that feel about the kid.
No, I agree. And he has that mindset. And even when he shows it, like he seems so mentally mature. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but for a guy that's so young in his NHL career. But again, these are things that younger athletes are more exposed to as well, too, right? They have sports psychologists, they do different things at a younger age, and they learn these talents. Where for me, I learned how to get mentally tough by sucking at times, getting whooped, getting pulled, beating the shit out of myself because I was brutal, and I just took my bumps and bruises, and you slowly start to build up a tolerance and learn to compartmentalize aspects of the game, aspects of your life, and know when you need to turn it on. And then I got exposed to sports psychologists as I got older into college, into pro. But these younger kids are more well-groomed athlete. And the more and more you say it, like I know it's been a topic this year with the Hyman stuff, but like it is a white-collar sport now, right? Where these guys are getting better training. It doesn't take away from the work they put in, but there's more exposure to the resources and what goes on in hockey. And I think Joseph Woll is a great example of like he's mature beyond his years, especially in the position he's in.
I'm going to pull an audible. I know we have Randy Carlyle coming up. I believe he's running behind. So at worst, I think we'll record the interview and put it up on YouTube. I think that makes a lot of sense. And unless we just keep dragging here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm dragging pretty good, buddy. I'm trying my best.
No, you're killing it. You're killing it. Let's do that. So again, folks, if you tune in and want to hear from Randy Carlyle, we'll try to record that, put that up on YouTube a bit later on. Let's get to the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app or visit Bet365.ca for the latest odds and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Anything you're looking at tonight specifically? Do you like the Oilers to bounce back in Game 3 maybe?
Yeah, I think the Oilers bounce back here. I think you get a big game from Stuart Skinner. This is going to be a game where he needs to be the best player on the ice, and I think the Oilers take this one. Obviously, there's some good matchups now, like their backs against the wall. I think, honestly, I don't think the Caps stand a chance tonight. The Rangers are just too good. I think they're in deep, but that would be the game. And the one that I'm really excited to see how Winnipeg can go into Colorado and how they play. You got to think Colorado at home, Georgiev bouncing back. It's going to be a big matchup, and to see what Connor Hellebuck can do tonight as well.
I was stunned. Georgiev turned in that performance the other night, man. My buddy's like, he really liked Colorado in that game. And I was like, dude, I just can't ride. I can't ride with you, given what I've seen from Georgiev, where it's like they got to make a proclamation this summer and be like, this isn't the guy. Maybe Toronto sniffs around on Georgiev. You never know. Like, you start to look around, the name that's going to come up, man, over the next couple months. And again, we're not tying a bow on this season just yet. Hopefully Sammy steps up. If not him, Woll. If not him, Martin Jones. If not him, Matt Murray. They got a four-headed monster. Don't forget that. But like UC Saros, you know him very well. I think his name's going to come up in this market, especially with one of the marquee guys in the Maple Leafs being 1 year away from UFA. Potential's there, but rest assured there are going to be teams lining up for your Markstroms, lining up for your Allmarks, lining up for your Saroses. I think it's going to be a fascinating summer goaltending wise, Huts. There are some pretty legit guys who are likely to be available, we'll say. And the dominoes are always fun this time of year, you know?
No, I agree. And it's odd to see guys like that, because usually it's hard to come by. Usually you buy a guy like me in free agency and then you regret it as soon as you do. So it's one of those things where It's you got to get, like, if there's guys like that available, especially if you don't trust the pipeline or you don't think there's a future there, and you have a team that is capable of winning, it's going to be interesting. Especially, I always love when there's changes, right? Like when all of a sudden you're getting into training camp and new guys on new teams. So it'll be interesting to see where they lay at the end.
Huts, excellent job today, man. I'm looking forward to Game 4, the goaltending story, special teams. I'm predicting a Maple Leafs victory, though. I feel really, really good about where this team's at, even in losing last game. I thought they were really, really good. Comes down to execution, comes down to goaltending, comes down to special teams, and we'll see what this team has in them. But, yeah, I want to see a raucous crowd, and hopefully it helps that it's a Saturday night.
Yeah, it should be rocking. I'm sure everyone will be a little primed up there. I know I'll be excited to watch this one. So I'm hoping for the Leafs here. We need this one bad.
Should mention, too, we're going to do another pregame show like we did last week. It's going to be me, Zach Phillips, and producer Vic's going to hop on as well. I believe we're going to go at 7:30 Eastern time. So now that you're aware of that, circle your calendars. Do what you got to do. We'll be right here live on YouTube at the Leafs Nation 401, 30 minutes before puck drop in Toronto to tee you up for Game 4 of that series. And don't forget, after the game, the Leafs Nation After Dark, where the one and only Jay Rosehill will make another guest appearance. And that should be a lot of fun as per usual. So we'll tie a bow on this one. Again, if you tuned in and are looking to hear from Randy Carlyle, we'll try to record that interview after this, put it up on YouTube. Many thanks to Jamie McLennan. Fantastic stuff as per usual. Producer Vic, you were great. Everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401 Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. That's Carter Hutton. I'm Nick Alberga, and we'll talk on Monday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.